All right, so if we were in the room together, this would of course be break up into groups and let's all talk about this. I didn't want to make you, get into groups and discuss it in, the ever so slow discussion that happens when you're typing things. So let's just sort of do a thought exercise. So here we have Sanjay and Elena. They're good friends. They share a love for scary horror films, and both have been anxiously awaiting the release of their favorite director's scariest film yet. I'm going to guess it's M. Night Shyamalan, but I don't know Sanjay and Elena well enough to know that. When the movie is finally released, they decide to go together to the first showing. It is just as spooky and suspenseful as they expected. On their way home, Sanjay and Elena recount to each other the most startling moments of the film and how scared they were. Sanjay drops Elena off at her apartment, but shortly before arriving home, Sanjay notices that his thoughts keep returning to Elena. He wonders if he's beginning to have romantic feelings for his friend, or is he just winding down from the scary high produced by the film he just watched? Well, I thought it might be fun if we thought about this in terms of the different theories that we learned about earlier, right? So, one of the things that we suggest in human sexuality for, if you're going to have a first date with somebody and you really want them to be, romantically attracted to you, do something scary with them. Go to a scary movie, go bungee jumping, do something that'll get you physiologically aroused. And it could be, do karaoke and embarrass yourself. That can be a good, physiological arouser. Things like that. Go on a roller coaster. Because a lot of times when you're physiologically aroused, you'll attribute it to whoever you're with. So one interpretation of what's going on with Sanjay and Elena is that when you get, physiologically aroused, in this case, fearful, you may misattach it to the person that you're with and think, I might be romantically attracted to that person or sexually attracted to that person, when in fact it's just your physiological arousal from the scary movie. So James Lang sounds like that might be a possible explanation, right? I'm sorry, I still have the snake stimulus because this is the exact same flow chart I used in the previous chapter. But so your autonomic nervous system is aroused, and then you label that based on whatever's going on at the time. So my autonomic nervous system is aroused. I really enjoyed talking about the movie with her and recounting it. And so now, am I attracted to her? I'm labeling that arousal after having experienced it, right? And the fact that the movie generated the autonomic nervous system arousal and he didn't start to think he might be attracted to Elena until he was away from her and on his way home makes it seem really like it might be James Lang at play for me. But it also could be, Schachter and Singer, right? Where the autonomic nervous system is aroused and maybe during the movie, Sanjay was just thinking about the movie and the cognitive appraisal of the movie and saying, wow, this is really a scary movie. I didn't think that bad guy was going to jump out like that, whatever. And so that led to the labeling of it as emotion, the emotion of fear initially. But then after walking home and talking about the movie and we, maybe getting wound up about the scariness of the movie again, but now my cognitive appraisal is, wow, she really remembers all the details I remember. And we're just so in sync. And, the cognitive appraisal now is that it's coming from Elena, not that it's coming from the movie. And so now I'm labeling it as possibly attraction rather than fear. So I personally feel like in this particular example that it is autonomic nervous system arousal leading to labeling, and it's possible that Schachter and Singer is a really good model to explain the whole thing because of initially during the movie I was just labeling it fear. It wasn't until I had this walk home with her and we were revisiting it, and now I'm calling it possibly attraction. So I feel personally like it's probably Schachter and Singer. Maybe in your own mind you're thinking something else. That's the beauty of these four models, though, because you really could argue for multiple of them. Let's try another one and see if we have a better chance. Anna is running for a seat in her state legislature. She is a political rookie. This is her first foray into the political arena. However, her uncle ran for the office of mayor in her hometown 10 years ago and won, and she gained a lot of experience helping him on that campaign. Anna is committed to her political party's platform, is consistently rated highly in local polls conducted by local media groups, has raised a comfortable amount of money to fund her campaign, and is confident in the position she has taken on all of the local issues. Now it is time for her first public debate with her opponent. Backstage, while waiting for the signal to take her place at the podium, Anna notices that her heart is racing and she feels butterflies in her stomach. She thought she was ready for the debate, but now she isn't so sure. Is she nervous and experiencing performance anxiety? Or is she just energized and raring to go against her opponent? So again, we can interpret through the different potential theories. So it sounds to me like everything in the description is implying that she is not thinking going into this any scary thoughts. She's having confident thoughts going into it, right? She's like, everything I'm doing seems to be being supported by my potential constituents and my party and everything. Like, I'm feeling confident. But then she notices the presence of this physiological component, the butterflies in her stomach. So it feels like the autonomic nervous system is coming first again, right? Because she's noticing the butterflies in her stomach, and then she starts second guessing. Am I nervous? No, I'm just excited. That's not nervousness, that's excitement. So in this particular example, it feels like, again, it's autonomic nervous system first, which leaves us with only James Lang or Schachter Singer to explain it, right? Because with Cannon-Bard or Lazarus, we're going to have the autonomic nervous system happening at the same time as the emotion. And right now she's having an autonomic nervous system and then trying to figure out what emotion she's experiencing. So I guess where the debate would have to lie then, knowing that they set it up so autonomic nervous system is first, we have to then figure out, is she having any kind of cognitive appraisal? And it kind of sounds like she is, right? She's wondering, is this nervousness, and is she actually experiencing performance anxiety, or is this her being, excited and ready to go? So it sounds like she's doing a cognitive appraisal. So it sounds again like I personally would settle on Schachter Singer given the way they've set up this description. I didn't write this, believe me. But again, you probably could make other arguments. I'm perceiving autonomic nervous system coming first because they say she notices that her heart is racing and she feels butterflies. Then in a separate sentence after that, she thought she was ready. I don't think Cannon-Bard can be the explanation because she's not right away going right to an emotion. She's not sure what the emotion is. So I feel like that can't be it. I feel like Lazarus can't be it because of that same argument. So I feel like I've settled down to it's got to be Schachter and Singer to explain this Anna's experience. All right, my last example. This might sound familiar to you guys. Final exam. After devouring breakfast in the school cafeteria, Alex heads toward the science building to take a final exam. He was up studying all night and had only 2 hours of fitful sleep, probably because he drank coffee and energy drinks all night to stay awake. Always a brilliant plan, Alex. At breakfast, Alex made sure to eat a well-balanced meal, plenty of eggs, multi-grain toast, and fruit topped with a dollop of yogurt. Thankfully, the cafeteria offers an unlimited supply of coffee, so Alex helped himself to 2 or 3 generous mugs full of coffee to make sure he didn't nod off during the final exam. Now, with his stomach happy and his mind full, Alex enters the classroom and sits at his desk. The professor begins to distribute the exams to the class, and Alex picks up his pen in preparation. At that moment, Justin, half asleep, walks past Alex's desk with his backpack swinging wildly from his arm. Justin's pack whacks Alex alongside the head, and Alex loses hold of his pen, which sails clear across the room. The professor glares at Alex, not at Justin. After he retrieves his pen and composes himself at his desk, now with the exam in front of him, Alex finds that his hands are shaking, his stomach is in a knot, and he feels his temperature rising. He is distracted. Is he angry at Justin? Is he nervous about the exam? Or is he just jittery from having too much caffeine in the last 24 hours? All right, so I'm noticing whoever wrote all of these examples, I have to admit, it feels very much like they keep telling us they're recognizing their bodily symptoms first. So I'm going to try and make this a different interpretation and say, let's go back to when he was preparing last night. He decided he had to stay up all night drinking coffee and energy drinks and only gave himself 2 hours of sleep opportunity which makes me feel like he made a cognitive appraisal that this is a big test that he could potentially fail. And so he was very, I would say, anxious, fearful. So it sounds to me like possibly Lazarus might explain that part of it, right? Where he has assessed, he's made the appraisal that this is a threat rather than a challenge. And he better, really, really study and, deprive himself of sleep and everything else because he has appraised the situation as a threat. And then that's what led him to experience the emotion of fear, which then made him not be able to sleep well, drove him to drink all the coffee and energy drinks that interfered with sleep as well. So I would say Lazarus's model would probably explain why he did all the stuff last night that led him to be in this condition this morning. What about, let's say everything was fine. Everything's fine. He's sitting at his desk. He's ready to go. And then he gets hit in the head, loses his pen, gets glared at by the professor, and now he's feeling jittery. So let's have those things happen. Okay, so the professor glared at him, not at Justin. Again, that feels like a cognitive appraisal, doesn't it? Where I'm interpreting the professor is mad at me and I shouldn't have lost my pen, even though Justin hit me with his backpack and that's why I dropped my pen. So I feel like we could also, again, throw in a Lazarus interpretation this time because maybe I'm making a cognitive appraisal that the professor doesn't even want me to do well on this test because he doesn't like me anyway. And that leads to, the nervousness and the autonomic nervous system response and stuff like that. That allows me to say something other than James Lang and Schachter Singer if I interpret it that way. I'm trying to think if we could make a Cannon-Bard explanation from this. Okay, so he gets his pen, he composes himself at his desk, and then he's like, my hands are shaking, I must be nervous. My hands are shaking, I must be angry. Simultaneously. The fact that they listed 3 options makes me feel like he's doing a cognitive appraisal. Why do I feel like this? Which kind of makes me want to say Schachter and Singer again. I don't want you to think I'm completely embracing of the Schachter and Singer model all the time. I think it's just the way these examples were set up. Well, hopefully those were interesting to you and maybe you had your own thoughts and your own interpretations. I want to wrap this section up just with a big picture overall, just, emotion regulation is a skill that it probably is in part innate, but probably also has been honed over our lifetimes, right? As we've learned how to manage our emotions. We vary among us, different people vary on how they attend to their emotions, right? Some of us are more likely to do reappraisals. Some of us, even in non-threatening situations, are more likely to use suppression. So there probably are individual differences on how we attend to emotion. We do see that, people who are prone to reappraisal tend to have positive outcomes, but they do have the negative outcome of possibly experiencing compassion collapse more often, where it's just too much and they just can't when it starts to become too big of a group of people to be compassionate towards. We tend to regulate our emotions in response to others' emotions through, the facial feedback effect and the behavior feedback effect. So, our emotional experiences are probably not happening entirely in a vacuum. A lot of it is, I'm going to give you an example, and this might even cause, just by me saying the example, you to have the experience where, where one person yawns, it kind of makes you have to yawn, right? That's an example of how much we feed off of each other for how to respond, right? How to feel. And so it's really important to keep in mind that our emotional regulation system is in part being facilitated or undermined by the people around us and how they're managing their emotions, right? And then I was trying to use those last 3 examples to illustrate that, labeling behaviors and internal states can be tricky and that, different theories of emotions really focus on different aspects of those behaviors and internal states. And so, it's not wrong to be thinking about emotions in a way that's different from your classmate or your family member or something like that. Different theorists think about them differently. And even given the exact same set of, behaviors, we could come to completely rational, different interpretations of what the person's experiencing. And that's really an important big takeaway. It's not like, I feel like because we're using the book that was written by the guy who became the source for the Lie to Me TV show, which if you ever watched that TV show in the last couple of seasons, it really became like one guy's a mind reader, right? And that's not true. Nobody has access to other people's mental states any better than the person themselves does, or that other people do. And there are lots of different ways to interpret behaviors and internal states and give them labels. So that's my final little thought on this whole thing. So I will see you next in our next segment, our next section. All right.